In the late 1700s, 13 small colonies along the eastern edge of North America did something no one expected. They challenged the most powerful empire on Earth and won. This is the story of the American Revolution, a fight for independence, ideas, and the birth of a new nation.
By the mid-18th century, Britain controlled vast territory across the globe. The American colonies were part of that empire, and for many years, life under British rule was relatively stable. Colonists considered themselves British. They spoke English, traded with Britain, and followed British law. But beneath the surface, tensions were growing. Britain had just fought the French and Indian War, a costly conflict against France. Victory gave Britain new land, but also massive debt. To pay it off, Parliament looked to the colonies. Starting in the 1760s, Britain imposed new taxes, the Stamp Act, the Sugar Act, and later the Townshend Acts. The colonists were furious, not just because of the money, but because they had no say. No taxation without representation became their rallying cry. Protests spread. British troops were sent to keep order. In 1770, tensions boiled over in Boston. British soldiers fired into a crowd of civilians, killing 5 colonists. The event became known as the Boston Massacre. Though small in scale, it was powerful propaganda. Patriots used it to paint Britain as a brutal oppressor. Resistance grew stronger. Groups like the Sons of Liberty organized boycotts and protests. And when Britain passed the Tea Act in 1773, colonists responded dramatically. Disguised as Native Americans, colonists boarded British ships and dumped hundreds of chests of tea into Boston Harbor. Britain was outraged. Parliament responded with harsh punishments known as the Intolerable Acts, closing Boston Harbor and limiting colonial self-government. Instead of isolating Massachusetts, Britain united the colonies against itself. In April 1775, British troops marched to seize colonial weapons in Lexington and Concord. Shots were fired. No one knows who fired first, but the war had begun. Colonial militias, known as Minutemen, forced the British to retreat back to Boston. The American Revolution was no longer a protest. It was an armed rebellion. In 1776, colonial leaders met in Philadelphia at the Second Continental Congress. On July 4th, they adopted a bold document written primarily by Thomas Jefferson, the Declaration of Independence. It declared that all men are created equal and that governments exist to protect natural rights, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Signing it was an act of treason. The signers knew that if they failed, they would be executed. The odds were overwhelming. Britain had the world's strongest navy and a professional army. The colonies had limited resources, little training, and no central government. But they had determination and leadership. George Washington, commander of the Continental Army, held the army together through brutal winters, including the infamous winter at Valley Forge. Victory came slowly. Early defeats were common, but in 1777, everything changed. At the Battle of Saratoga, American forces defeated a major British army. This victory convinced France to join the war on the American side. French money, weapons, and naval power transformed the conflict into a global war. Spain and the Netherlands would later join against Britain, stretching British resources thin. In 1781, American and French forces trapped British General Charles Cornwallis at Yorktown, Virginia. Cut off by land and sea, Cornwallis surrendered. Though fighting continued briefly,
the war was effectively over. In 1783, Britain formally recognized American independence with the Treaty of Paris.
Victory brought freedom, but also enormous challenges. The colonies were now states, united under a weak government. Soon, they would draft the U.S. Constitution, creating a new system of government unlike any before it. The American Revolution was more than a war. It was an experiment, one that inspired revolutions around the world and reshaped ideas about liberty, democracy, and human rights.
Against impossible odds, a group of colonies defied an empire and changed history. Their revolution was imperfect, unfinished, and deeply flawed, but it marked the beginning of a nation still shaping the world today. This was the American Revolution. Please like this video and consider subscribing for future content and suggest what you want to see next. Thank you for watching.